Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Tuesday, December 17th, 2019. Here are our top stories, what you need to know about this year's holiday shopping, and how technology will transform healthcare in 2020 and beyond. It's Technology Tuesday. That means a look at the latest intersection between personal finance, retirement, and technology. And who better to do that? Daniel Klein, Senior Technology and Consumer Products Reporter with The Motley Fool. Hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Cold. It's 26 degrees the day we're recording this. It's very cold.
Hey, you can tape the show here. There's plenty of room in Florida.
Okay, I'll see. Yeah, I'll see if we're moving in. I'm not sure if you have enough room for my wife, 2 cats, and an entire studio. But thank you very much for the offer. We might take you up on it.
Hey, you're welcome to the Orlando house.
Oh, love it. Lovely. So, Dan, thanks so much for joining us. You know, it's Christmas time. We have talked on both of the podcast and on the show about Cyber Monday and Black Friday. Why don't you give us an update on how some of that holiday shopping is going?
So, digital sales have risen, and everyone could see that coming. But brick and mortar stores remain unbelievably important. So, you're still seeing the vast majority of sales move through brick and mortar stores. Roughly 85% are actually made in those stores, but many of the digital orders, and we don't have exact numbers for this, are being ordered online and picked up in store. And then there's the other type of order where you go to a store, you look at something, you handle it, and then you decide, oh, well, I don't want to put this in my car. I don't want to carry it through the mall. So you just get on your phone and order it. So chains that have embraced the omni-channel model, that's something you'll hear me talk about over and over again. But it's really letting consumers shop however they want to shop, wherever that is working really, really well. And it shouldn't really matter to a retailer exactly how you buy, though they are trying to incentivize you to pick up the order in the store, because one, that gets you in a store, but even if you just do curbside pickup at, say, a Target or a Walmart that offers that, at least they don't have to spend the money to deliver it to you in the 1 and 2 day window, which obviously becomes more challenging this time of year.
Yeah, and I know you and I have talked about this on the podcast, that it really is a misconception that brick and mortar can't do well or doesn't do well during this time of year. I mean, there is important, as you just said, picking up items, but also, you know, people still do go out and shop. It's a social thing. People like to go out and hold the item. They want to see how the TV looks instead of looking at it online and hoping that it's the right resolution for them and their family.
Yeah, and there's just a level of, if I'm buying you, my wife a sweater, I want to see the sweater. I want to get a sense of if it might fit her. And yeah, if I'm at the mall and they don't have her size, it's wonderful that I can see the different size and jump on and order the right one. There's clearly a level of convenience to that. And there's definitely a younger, or at least a more digital shopper like myself, who I buy on Amazon all the time. So if I see something my wife might want, I might in October have bought her a Christmas gift because she's not the easiest person to buy for. And then the challenge becomes making sure she doesn't open the package before I do, because obviously our mail comes to the same place. So there's all sorts of ways to do it, but physical stores are part of an experience. You're going out to get a cup of coffee, you're having dinner at a restaurant, you're going to the movie theater that's located at the mall. It's all sort of integrated, and you might just walk around a store and that gives you an idea to buy something that maybe you buy at a different store. So there is still a physical component. Trying things on is not something you can do virtually all that well yet. Yes, there's digital tailors, there's other options. If it's something you already own, you could probably buy another one and be confident in the size. But the retailers that are winning are either ones that are giving you a reason to go to a store, like a TJ Maxx or a Marshalls, where you don't know what you're going to find and you're going to get great value, and it's sort of a fun treasure hunt experience. That's one type of reason. The other reason is just the practicality of, am I going to buy shoes that I didn't try on? Probably not.
You know, Dan, you bring up the customized fitting that you can use your phone to do that. I've tried that. I tried to buy a pair of jeans that way. And I don't think I'm that hard to fit in terms of jeans. You know, I have a 30-inch waist or whatever, and I generally wear Levi's. Didn't work for me at all. So I don't know if that's a function of my phone or what.
I am, a bigger guy, hopefully a more muscular guy these days with all the working out. but I did one of those companies, and I won't embarrass them by naming the company, but I had to do the bit where you put your phone down, you spin around in underwear, it takes your measurements. And I've talked about this on Motley Fool shows before, the material the pants were made of was substandard compared to like even just going to Old Navy and buying jeans. Second, the pants looked like, and they did fit, but like they look like the high waist pants Apu wears on The Simpsons. It was not a flattering look, and they were not inexpensive. The problem I have is I'm not the tallest guy. I'm only 5'8", and if you're 5'8", apparently you should have a 30-inch waist, and I don't. So I have to buy pants that are too long and have them tailored. And it feels silly to buy $40 jeans and spend $20 having them tailored, but that's generally what I have to do.
Yeah, it makes sense. I was just disappointed with the results, so I sent it back. Dan, one more question for this segment. I've been reading stories about Amazon 2-day shipping or shipping that was delayed. There were some challenges there. Did you hear the same thing and any news to that?
I read the same stories like I've read every year. And when you are, and I'm going to make up this number, but when you're sending 90 kajillion packages or whatever Amazon is sending out, there's going to be some that don't go well. And it becomes like a bad review on Yelp. You might go to the nicest restaurant in the world, but you're the guy who there's a piece of a bug in his plate or a hair or whatever it is, and you caught the waiter who's normally impeccable on a bad day and he doesn't handle it well, and you post a review because your experience was terrible. Is that typical of 99.9% people who went to that restaurant? It isn't. And I'll give a personal example. My favorite restaurant in Connecticut, which we've eaten at 200 times, the first time we went there, a friend I was with had that experience. There was a hair on her plate, and she complained, and the waiter did not handle it well. He wasn't polite. We didn't go back for 3 or 4 months until someone else invited us there. But we learned that experience wasn't typical. And that's what's happening with Amazon. Yeah, I ordered 500 things from Amazon last year, and 2 of them got lost. It happens. There's not going to be a 100% rate, and that will be amplified over the holidays, because if you bought your wife her big gift and it's supposed to arrive Christmas Eve and it shows up January 3rd, well, you're in more trouble than if you bought, like, I don't know, cat food and it came a day late. So, it's the time of season where everything seems harder.
And I'm wondering if those articles were sponsored by Target or Walmart. That's just me. So, Dan,
Walmart should be calling out attention to anyone because their delivery is still a mess, in my opinion.
Dan, hang around for a couple more minutes. When we come back, we're going to talk with Dan about technology and healthcare. So stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back. We're talking to Dan Klein, Senior Technology Consumer Products Reporter with The Motley Fool. Dan, thanks so much for sticking around again this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So let's shift gears from Cyber Monday. I was going to say cybersecurity because we talked about that, but Cyber Monday and Black Friday and shopping and people being into black. Let's shift gears and talk about healthcare and technology. Many of us have Fitbits, Apple Watches, but technology is really becoming an important aspect to healthcare.
So there's sort of a consumer-facing area and a doctor-facing area, and they both face similar problems. So imagine you've been a doctor for 20 years, or I'll give the example, I've been a journalist for 20 years. When the technology changes and your company decides it's going to use something new, it's always painful. That might be, in my case, a new content management system where you have to learn different buttons, different things. In the case of doctors, it's integrating technology into basic treatment. So that might be having medical records in an iPad, that might be using new digital diagnostic tools. And there are people, a buddy of mine does this for a living, he teaches doctors at a very high-end hospital how to use the technology, and there's a lot of resistance, and that's very understandable, because if you've done something a certain way, and you're used to someone handing you a paper folder, and that has the annotated records, and now all of a sudden you have to do all that on your thumb, with your iPad in your thumb, that becomes tricky, and you're already learning a lot. Then there's the consumer part of it. We talked about, I think it was last week, that I used Teladoc, or a Teladoc-like product, to have a small infection on my fingernail diagnosed, and I had to send them pictures, and I got a prescription, and it saved me money and a trip to the doctor. It was absolutely wonderful, but people are hesitant to embrace that, and we're seeing more and more companies make that type of service part of their system. Chipotle got a lot of news coverage this week that they're offering digital nurse visits to certify that employees are sick, so the employee can take the day off without having to sort of chance that they're going to get in trouble. On one level, that met some backlash with, well, why can't I just tell you I'm sick and not come to work? On the other hand, the intent of it was to sort of remove that stigma where you have a cold, but you go to work anyway and you get people sick. You don't want that in food service. So we're really at the precipice where all of these tools exist. There's all sorts of amazing things doctors can use. There's some really neat things you can use as a consumer to sort of not have to go sit in the doctor's office for routine prescription refills. When you have the same thing your spouse just got diagnosed for, it's pretty easy to go to Teladoc and hold up your wife's prescription and be like, she has strep throat. I feel like I have strep throat. They're going to believe you. They're going to give you a prescription. You're not getting opioids that way. You're not getting painkillers, but you can handle, very routine things. I'm asthmatic. I take prescription asthma medicine. I could jump on Teladoc and say, here's my last prescription. It expired. I need another 3 months or whatever it is. It cost me $25 instead of having to go to a doctor's visit, which can cost much more and take much more time. So I think you're going to see more consumers use it, especially as big companies adopt it and start having training seminars, because it really is better technology. But people are resistant. Doctors are resistant. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, Dan, wearables, as I said in the lead into the segment, wearables obviously something that is taken off, and I think it's really expected to grow, especially in the healthcare arena. Are we at a place with the Apple Watch, the Fitbit, the number of other products that are out there? I know I have a heart rate monitor that I use occasionally when I go rowing. Are we at a point where those can bring value in terms of collecting data so that doctors outside of the doctor's office, that can help them predict a little bit better how you're going to be, your health situation?
So Apple has made collecting aggregate data a big part of its health push, and it's going to use that data to tackle heart disease, and not Apple itself, but doctors are going to use that data and tackle some of our biggest problems. I think we're at the earliest phase of just how useful these devices are. Your Apple Watch can tell you if you're having a heart attack, it can report it. There's all sorts of things that I think we're going to see routine diagnosis. Things like diabetics having their blood sugar checked just from their watch without a pinprick. And we're right at the edge of that. And you're starting to see Best Buy owns a company that does, call it medical assisted devices, to joke, but the old I fall and I can't get up technology where you push a button and someone comes. But taking that to like new levels where there's health monitoring, there's passive, where like if you stop breathing in your sleep, it shocks you and wakes you up. I'm making that up. But like that level of technology, and you're going to start seeing watches that can do a lot more, and watches that can maybe, analyze your sweat and tell you you're dehydrated or that you need more potassium or whatever it is. I am not wearing it at the moment because I just ordered a new one that is actually sitting in my mailbox, but I wear a Fitbit and I use it largely to track, have I elevated my heart rate enough during the day to be considered exercise, though it does consider sweating after a heavy meal exercise, so it's not 100% accurate. And I use it to track how many steps I've taken, because I try to take 10,000 steps in days I'm not working out at the gym. So those are baby steps compared to what this technology will be able to do. And we've gotten to the point that I think it's somewhat ubiquitous among a, let's call it upper middle class, wherever you and I fit in. And we're getting to the point that a $20 fitness tracker is going to be just something everyone uses. And even the Apple Watches, as they get more and more sophisticated, an Apple Watch 1 can still do incredible things. And I'm guessing you could find one for, probably under $150.
Dan, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but to that point, I mean, and I know you're not necessarily a healthcare reporter, but let's talk about some of the extraneous aspects of the healthcare system. We have a lot of high expenses. There's potentially a lot of administrative waste. Are there ways to use? We've talked about artificial intelligence. In fact, we talked about it last week, I think. Are there ways to use that technology, some of these other things that we're talking about, to squeeze out that extraneous waste to help drive some of these costs down? Because that's important too. We see a lot of administrative expense between the carrier, the insurance carrier, the doctor, and the consumer.
So I think we're in the early days of what we'll call a revolution. There is a lot of interest for the health insurance companies to not have massive change, for them to remain in charge. But now that you have a health insurance company owns CVS, and CVS is working on democratizing healthcare with its walk-in clinics, and in a couple of markets they have a health concierge who helps you navigate what you need. So I do think you're going to see technology start to wade through this, and a lot of the sort of nonsense that's in the healthcare system in the next, call it 20 years, will get squeezed out, because as much as it's a political issue and people, Obamacare, Medicare for all, whatever it is, the vast majority of people want people to have health care. And they look at something like a person doesn't have health insurance, so they go to the emergency room because they have, a cold, and it costs $3,000 that they don't pay, but that's the only place they could go. I think any person, no matter what political leaning you have, would say, well, if I'm already spending that $3,000, how can I spend it to treat 20 people? And technology and teledoc and other things like that are going to figure into that. So on one hand, you have to break some of the profit motive. On the other hand, you have to sort of make it very easy to use and have consumers force it. And when you start to see big companies like Google testing different healthcare models where they're actually giving employees access to nurse visits, in-person nurse visits, and telemedicine and other ways to make it easier, eventually these kind of things become standards. I mean, we're not that long ago that the idea of an open office was crazy. And then more and more companies started doing it, and it became the norm. I think you're going to see healthcare as a company-involved service, just like when I worked in New York City in the late 90s, they would pick up our dry cleaning at the office, or at Motley Fool headquarters, there's a person that comes, I'm going to say once a month, but I don't know the cadence, so say once a month, to cut people's hair. Because if you have a job, it is difficult to get certain routine things done during the day. If you have kids and have to deal with them at night, it becomes impossible. So there's going to be a consumer push for it, and that's going to be backed by technology. If your watch could tell you, oh my God, you have a virus, it can't do that yet, but let's pretend in 5 years it can, it might be able to get you the best course of treatment. Or you have a cold, your vitamin C level needs to be higher. Whatever it is, there should be technology to do that. And right now it's mostly focused on heart monitoring, but of all the things you don't want to break, your heart's really up there in terms of importance. So we're off to a good start.
Yeah, 30 seconds left, Dan. I mean, how much, we talk about inertia in the retirement savings aspect, right, putting money away. What about inertia as it relates to adopting new technologies? Someone, you mentioned teledoc, but maybe someone just wants to go see the doctor. Do you think that still plays a role in different generations adopting new technologies?
It does. We've talked about my mom before, who's like a pretty hip mother in that she uses Netflix, she has an iPad, she's pretty technically savvy. But if I said to her, use Teledoc, she wouldn't know she'd be like, is that like a phone call where you tell a doctor something and he tells someone else? Like, she would have no idea.
Tell a doc, right.
Yeah, and I do think you're going to have to use the senior centers and the 55 plus communities and do some outreach and some education, because that is an age group where you're seeing the doctor more. But if you're seeing the doctor for more routine things and you can do it virtually, doesn't replace getting a physical, doesn't replace some of the reasons you need to visit a doctor. But there are some things. I mean, I could look at my finger. I knew what was wrong. It wasn't, I wasn't going to go in and he's like, no, that's not an infection. You have Ebola. Like, it was pretty clear what I had. So that type of thing, and that's going to ease up the doctors in general. So if you take 20% of the routine traffic out of that waiting room, well, there's a possibility that I won't have a 10 a.m. appointment and at 11:30 be sitting there. They always take you out of the waiting room and put you in the room where there's nothing to do. Like,
That's true.
there's like a highlights magazine from 1987 and People's Man of the Year 2004. Like, those are your choices. Or you can read about diseases that are up on the wall. So the more you can sort of ease that congestion, it works just like Starbucks and mobile ordering. If a certain amount of people mobile order, well, they're not waiting in line, and you can change around your personnel to focus on service rather than sort of handling the customer. It's definitely going to be an improvement, but it is going to take some time for adoption.
And maybe update your magazine subscriptions. Dan Klein, always a pleasure talking with you. Great insight as always, and we'll talk to you again later in the week on the podcast. Have a great rest of the week.
Thanks for having me.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it educational as well. Have a topic or someone of interest that you think we should interview? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Waiting here for you to take and drink of. But if you're tired of the same